General Hospital spoilers reveal that Michael Corinthos, once the bearer of so many hopes upon his return to Port Charles after undergoing treatment in Germany, is now trapped in a nightmare with no way out. He had prepared everything: legal strategies, support from Carly and Jason, and the belief that truth and justice would be on his side. But fate, as always, is merciless. At the most critical moment, the day of the custody hearing for Wiley and Amelia, Michael was nowhere to be found. His body, still not fully recovered from severe physical and psychological trauma, had finally given out. Without warning, exhaustion overtook him, and he collapsed onto his hospital bed, helpless, as the fate of his children, his reputation, and his future was being decided just a few blocks away. His absence wasn't just an empty chair in the courtroom, it was the symbol of a father's collapse. One who had vowed to protect his family at all costs. Those present at the hearing witnessed what no one had wished for: the seat reserved for Michael empty. Where he should have stood strong, answering questions, presenting evidence, and fighting to the end, there was only a bitter, deafening silence. Carly, dressed in a muted black dress reflecting her restrained grief, sat behind, clutching a file folder that now felt meaningless. Jason stood silently beside her, his expression torn, part sorrow, part anger, knowing Michael had pushed himself too far to prove something he no longer had the strength to prove. The judge, stern-faced, couldn't hide his surprise and confusion. Drew and Willow's legal team wasted no time capitalizing on the opportunity. They submitted medical reports from Germany showing Michael had left treatment early without the approval of his primary physician. A leaked internal email from the medical staff was presented, citing concerns that Michael was severely jeopardizing his recovery due to psychological pressure. Instantly, the image of Michael shifted, from a devoted father to a high-risk, unstable individual possibly unfit to care for two young children needing constant attention. Drew's team didn't stop there. They released new security footage showing Michael leaving the clinic exhausted, on crutches, helped by two staff members into a car. What could have been a moment of vulnerability was reframed as recklessness. Witnesses were called, including Michael's doctor from Germany via video call, who confirmed the patient had voluntarily withdrawn from comprehensive treatment despite medical warnings. Each testimony, each piece of evidence, felt like a blade slicing away the last sliver of hope Michael had. Carly tried to respond, pleading Michael's love for his children, everything he had sacrificed, but her words were drowned out by the cold, impenetrable wall of legal scrutiny and skeptical glares from the courtroom. The unspoken consensus was forming. Michael was no longer seen as mentally and physically fit to raise his children. The weight of this began to haunt the entire family. Carly, who had given up everything to support her son, now looked like a mother who had failed to protect her grandchildren from Drew and Willow's rising influence. Jason, once the balancing force in every battle, felt more powerless than ever. And Michael, alone in his hospital bed, could only stare at the stark white ceiling, consumed by unspeakable pain. Not just defeat, but absence during the most important moment of his life. A father unable to be there for his children, that's something he might never forgive himself for. At court, Drew and Willow maintained composure, but their advantage was clear. What was once speculation had become certainty. They could now present themselves to the judge as offering a safe, stable, and emotionally supportive environment. And with Michael unable to show up, it was almost a sealed verdict. Port Charles reeled. Public opinion split, some pitted Michael. Others criticized his unnecessary risk. But no one could deny one thing: Michael Corinthos had lost, not from lack of ability, but because his own body and fate betrayed him at the worst possible time. In the dark hospital room, where only the steady beeping of heart monitors broke the silence, Michael didn't know if he could rise again, not physically, but emotionally. And after such a crushing defeat, could he ever fight again, or would he remain buried in the very pain he tried so hard to overcome? In Port Charles, anything can happen, especially when the one once seen as the heir to the light, is slowly being swallowed by a darkness he cannot resist. Meanwhile, Carly and Diane are being swept into a whirlwind of chaos neither can fully control. after Michael failed to attend the custody hearing due to his health. Their meticulously crafted legal plan began to unravel by the hour. Carly, usually led by instinct and fierce loyalty to her family, now had to operate like a true strategist. Diane, the sharp, unshakable attorney, faced a new and more complex storm than any case she had ever handled. Things worsened as more damaging evidence about Michael surfaced, forcing them to shift from offense to full-blown defense. But the terrifying truth was that no matter how brilliant Diane was, she couldn't argue away the glaring fact. Her client was absent from the most important court date of his life. No legal argument could change the impression this left on a judge expecting the physical presence of a father. Desperate measures started forming. Carly considered filing for temporary custody under the principle of preserving a stable environment for the children. At one point, she even entertained publicly criticizing Willow to drive a legal wedge between her and Drew. Yet all these actions, while potentially effective in the short term, risked exploding the situation. Willow, once soft-spoken, now felt cornered, and that only made her more determined to defend her new family with Drew. The harder Carly and Diane tried to salvage the case, the more they realized they were fighting on ever-shifting ground, where every move could backfire. Then came another blow. Opposing counsel revealed that Michael had signed a medical waiver refusing prolonged treatment, a decision that could be interpreted as prioritizing personal choice over parental responsibility. Diane, nearly furious at how the information was twisted, understood that the opposing side had been preparing for this moment for a long time. They weren't just attacking legally, they were manipulating public perception and exploiting emotional angles. Carly, meanwhile, began to feel a cruel reality settling in. If they didn't come up with a breakthrough move soon, Michael wouldn't just lose custody permanently, the Corinthos family's reputation could take a permanent hit. In her most desperate moments, Carly didn't just see Michael collapsing in the hospital, she imagined Wiley and Amelia growing up without their father, raised in a home she couldn't influence, under Drew, once a family ally. Now their most dangerous adversary. The legal system, public opinion, and the shadowy forces backing Drew were pushing Carly and Diane into a constant state of firefighting. They were no longer leading the battle, they were being driven back with every step. Every decision now carried the weight of life and death. One wrong move, and everything would be lost. In this moment, Carly is no longer just a mother fighting for her son. She's a woman standing against the world to protect what she believes is sacred, family. Diane is no longer the cool-headed litigator, she has become the fierce ally of a mother haunted by looming loss. Together, in sleepless nights and tense strategy sessions, they try to ignite one final flame of hope, that even as everything explodes, even as the law tilts against them, justice will prevail, if they don't give up. But with every passing hour, the tide shifts further. And in Port Charles, as always, all it takes is one spark, one testimony, one revelation, one shred of evidence, to set everything ablaze. Carly and Diane know that. And that's why they're still running, not from the fight, but toward it, with everything they have left. Because they know one thing, if they lose this time, there won't be another chance. The story of Michael Corinthos is entering an unprecedentedly dark phase, where everything he once held dear, family, morality, and his belief in justice, is crumbling one by one. The new pressures from the legal system, public opinion, and underground forces are no longer just external obstacles, they are becoming deep fractures within Michael's soul, pushing him to the edge between clarity and darkness. From the very moment Michael was unable to attend the hearing, a moment that would decide the fate of his future with Wiley and Amelia in his absence, a part of his psyche died. No one could have imagined how devastating it would be to not stand before the court and tell his children, "Daddy is still here." While Drew and Willow were present, able to speak, defend themselves, Michael lay helpless in a cold hospital room, hearing the accusations through a speaker, watching headlines online tear him apart, while the children he swore no one would ever take from him slowly slipped out of his reach. And when the law ceased to be on his side, when the evidence against him was processed and released like fatal blows, Michael realized he was no longer fighting a regular courtroom battle. He was being dragged into a systematic takedown campaign, where the image of a devoted father was twisted into that of a reckless, unstable man willing to risk his health just to cling to power. His unauthorized departure from the German medical facility, once seen as an act of courage, was now used against him, a silent verdict handed down by those who were once his allies, or worse. His family. Carly, despite her best efforts to contain the damage, was increasingly shut out of a legal machine she could no longer manipulate. Diane was exhausted as the evidence stacked higher. And Jason, the shield Michael had always relied on, remained suspiciously silent. Michael, who once believed that love for his children would always be enough to win, now understood a bitter truth. Justice does not care about love. It cares about appearances, procedures, and strategic advantage. And Michael had none of those. From that pressure, a new version of Michael was born, one without mercy. He began taking actions no one expected, severing ties with former allies who now stayed silent, hiring a private, elite legal team, and refusing to play by the old rules. He moved his financial base out of Aurora Media, secretly redirecting investments to private firms in the Northeastern Bay, companies known for their legal evasiveness and financial firepower in legal warfare. These actions have not yet been made public, but whispers of a rising, dark Michael are spreading through Port Charles, someone no longer fighting for justice, but for systematic revenge. The darkness inside Michael grows daily, and the most dangerous part is that he no longer sees it as wrong. He believes he must become this version of himself to survive. Every time he looks back, trusting Willow, calling Drew an ally, naively thinking Carly could control the courtroom, Michael gains one more reason to believe that kindness is just a knife others use to stab him. His anger is no longer just emotion, it's fuel. He wants to dismantle the old system, expose the hypocrites at the center of Port Charles's power. He begins contacting powerful figures from other states, individuals with criminal records, backgrounds in arms trafficking and international finance. No one knows exactly what Michael is trading, but everyone understands one thing: he no longer seeks to win legally. He wants domination. He wants to destroy everything that hurt him, at any cost. And when rumors emerge that Michael hired a private investigative team to monitor every move Drew and Willow make, people within the inner circle begin to worry. This is no longer a custody battle. This is the quiet vengeance of a father who once loved with everything, but was strangled by his own bloodline. Those who were once victims are now pawns on Michael's board, where law is no longer a boundary, and emotion is no longer a barrier. Port Charles is facing a silent catastrophe. Everyone is waiting for Michael to break down and let go, but no one realizes that pushing him to the brink has awakened the monster within. And when that version of him rises, no longer bound by old restraints, the entire system will pay the price. Because Michael is no longer a father seeking justice. He has become the embodiment of revenge, forged by betrayal, failure, and the haunting loss of his children. And the scariest part is, he is no longer afraid of losing anything. A profound shock is shaking the emotional foundation of Port Charles as Willow, the woman indirectly responsible for pushing Michael to the brink, unexpectedly returns in a role no one saw coming. The primary caregiver during his physical and emotional recovery from severe burn complications. In a time when Michael has been barred from the courtroom, his reputation slandered, his legal rights slipping away, and his spirit nearly paralyzed, her return is not just surprising, it is a turning point that's both a chance to heal and the seed of a greater storm forming. Willow doesn't walk into Michael's hospital room with pride, nor with simple guilt. She walks in as someone who has seen the full consequences of decisions she once thought were right, carrying remorse so deep, she can no longer stand aside. Seeing Michael motionless, his body marked by burns, the once strong face now painfully gaunt, Willow knows she can no longer just be a bystander. Because that man was once her entire world. Her rock in the darkest times, and now, she may be the only person who can pull him back from the abyss. But this isn't just about compassion. Willow staying by Michael's side, feeding him, giving him medicine, even sleeping in the room every night to monitor his vitals, spreads like wildfire through Port Charles. Rumors ignite everywhere, from hospital corridors to courtrooms. coffee shops to police stations. Some think she's trying to make amends. Others believe she's quietly collecting points for court appearances to salvage her image after various scandals. But those closest, like Carly and Jason, see it differently. Carly feels betrayed. She fought relentlessly to help Michael regain custody. And now Willow, who sided with Drew, returns to her son not with open repentance, but with silent implication. Jason is cautious. He knows Michael too well and senses what others are afraid to say. Michael is not just being cared for, he is changing. And this change is coming from Willow's constant presence. Michael, though still physically weak, is showing strange signs of mental recovery. He no longer rages when Drew is mentioned. He doesn't react negatively when doctors bring up the court case. Instead, he grows quieter, more contemplative. His eyes deepen. As if he's seeing connections no one else can sense. Something in Willow's presence is more than comforting. It's something obscure, complex, a bond formed through shared pain and betrayal. The closer they get, the more they feel haunted, like Michael's burns are not just skin deep, but the physical manifestation of a love once scorched, now smoldering back to life in a twisted shape. Willow changes too. She refuses media interviews. She declines to appear with Drew at events. And though she's made no official statement, everyone understands, Drew is being left behind. Especially when Michael, in a rare lucid moment, gripped her hand tightly and whispered, "You're here, but is this part of forgiveness, or part of control?" That question haunts Willow, and the audience, because no one knows where the line lies between love and strategy, healing and manipulation. Slowly, insane theories begin to stir among those who once thought they understood this couple. What if Willow's caregiving is not just kindness, but the very thing binding Michael to a new version of himself? A Michael no longer angry, but no longer kind either. A Michael who realizes that her presence during recovery has become a greater advantage than any legal win, because he's reclaiming a place in her heart through silence, pain, and the raw instinct to survive. And when Willow starts journaling her care for Michael, no one but her knows what lies between the lines: tears, unanswered questions, and a fear that she may be creating a monster. A man who once shattered completely, now resurrected, not with love, but with obsession. And if that's true, if Michael, once fully recovered, stands and looks Drew, Willow, and all of Port Charles in the eye with no more mercy, will anyone be brave enough to stop him? The answer is still being written, each night. With every slow heartbeat Michael regains, and every minute of silence shared between two people who once loved, once destroyed, and are now rebuilding something, no one knows if it's love, or the weapon for the greatest revenge Port Charles has ever seen. Michael is on the brink of a whole new chapter, one no longer written with moral promises or faith in the law, but with the pain of betrayal, the pain of irreparable damage, and the thirst for power that is increasingly consuming his mind. As all the legal rights that were once his, parental rights, financial rights, the rights to love and trust, are stripped away, Michael realizes that if he is to regain his position, he will need to fight a new battle. A battle based not on compassion, but on the cold, calculating, and ruthlessness of a man with nothing left to lose. He has tried to fight the old way, with lawyers, with sincerity, by showing up at the right time, doing the right thing, living for his children, for others. But all those efforts only brought him a cruel end, removed from the court due to his health condition, judged unfit to raise a child, and replaced in the life of the woman who once called him her husband. Drew stood in his place, publicly, legally, backed by powerful connections and public support. Willow, though she had returned to care for him, was still the one who had stood on the other side when Michael needed her most. Michael understood that if he continued to play the game the others had set, he would never win. And so he needed a new war, a war of his own making, with his own rules rewritten. It would not be a court battle anymore, but a campaign to rebuild power from the roots, from the financial corporations to the secret alliances that had backed the Corinthos family for years. Michael wasn't coming back to be accepted, he was coming back to take it all, even what wasn't his on paper. Michael's darkness was no longer something he hid. It became armor. He began to give orders faster, colder. Those who had been close to him felt the distance. Michael no longer asked for advice, no longer needed approval. He began to eliminate members of his old advisory board, replacing them with out-of-town financial experts, people paid to be loyal, not to be loved. He worked through the night, without sleep, without rest, and he didn't let anyone get too close, not even Carly, not even Jason. Because he understood, the most vulnerable thing was family. To win, he had to learn to be independent. Port Charles began to feel the storm coming. Unusual banking transactions began to appear. A string of anonymous companies in the names of out-of-towners bought up the land around Aurora Media's headquarters. Rumors were swirling that Michael was preparing for a financial takeover, without the need for a courtroom. And while Drew thought he had his power firmly in place, an undercurrent was pulling everything from below, quietly but unstoppably. Michael was no longer the wounded father. He was operating like a strategist. Every move was calculated based on data, public impact, and the reaction of his opponents. He didn't talk to the press. Didn't defend himself. He let people talk bad about him, let the accusations continue to circulate, because he knew, the underdog was always the most dangerous. This new war wouldn't have to be fought on television, or in a courtroom. It would be fought in the financial markets, in backroom deals, in rooms without cameras, where Michael would gradually reclaim what he had lost, not with mercy, but with absolute power. And when he comes back, those who once stood above him, including Drew, including Sidwell, including those who exploited his vulnerability, will no longer stand. Michael has been gone for a while, burned by the external wounds. But the internal wounds, the betrayal, the loss of his son, the disregard, are the fires that are forging him into a new man. A Michael who is darker, sharper, and has no moral boundaries when it comes to reclaiming what is his. And when he returns, not to apologize, not to explain, but to take over, to rewrite the system that once rejected him, Port Charles will realize, the real war never really began. It's just begun, and Michael, this time, will be the one leading the charge. Not the wounded father, but the one reborn from the fire, ready to burn down anyone who stands in his way.